Good slide, the APFA retirement webinar. This portion of the presentation will talk about understanding your pension. A little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is current as of April of 2018. If you haven't already done so, please download the most recent version of the Good Slide retirement handout so that you can follow along with this presentation. It can be downloaded from the retirement page of the APFA website. And as always, if you have any questions, just shoot us an email at retirement@apfa.org. Now, when we talk about pensions and understanding what you're eligible for, it's going to depend on which carrier you came from prior to the merger, either Legacy US Airways or Legacy American Airlines. And if you're Legacy US Airways, your pension rules are further defined by which predecessor carrier you started with: PSA, Trump Shuttle, US Airways, Piedmont Airlines, or Allegheny. So let's go through the different rules that each pension plan has. If you started with the Trump Shuttle, sorry about that. If you started with the Trump Shuttle, your full retirement age is going to be 62. Your early retirement age is 52, and there's a 3% reduction for each year taken before age 62. So in the case of shuttle flight attendants starting their pensions early, it could be up to a 30% reduction. And this 3% reduction per year is common across all pension plans. If you're ex-Piedmont, Allegheny, or US Air, your full retirement age is 62, but your early retirement age doesn't start until 55. With that 3% reduction for each year that it's taken before the full age, you're looking at up to a 21% reduction in pension. And if you're ex-PSA, your full retirement age is 65, your early retirement age is 55, and again, with that same 3% reduction per year, it could be up to 30%. If you're Legacy American Airlines, your full retirement age is 60, and your early retirement age is 55. And with that 3% reduction for each year that's taken before age 60, you're looking at up to 15%. One of the common questions we get is from Legacy US Airways flight attendants, and it's, when can I start to double dip? Because you're collecting a PBGC pension, you can still fly and draw your pension once you have reached age 62 if you started with Shuttle, or age 65 if you started with Piedmont, Allegheny, PSA, or US Air. So how many different ways can I get my money? Well, there's 3 different ways. Basically, you've got the single life annuity, and the PBGC will call this a straight life annuity. You can share with someone else, and we'd like to remind you that it's always nice to share. And there's the option of a minimum number of checks. If you're Legacy American, there's a 4th option, and it's called the level income option. It's more money up front and less later on. And the single life annuity is pretty straightforward. You get a check every month until you're dead. Any questions? Now, the single life annuity is a payment for every month, and so that makes it an annuity. And it's for life, and that makes it a life annuity. And it's for one life, yours. So it's a single life annuity. And again, the PBGC will call this a straight life annuity. And the single life annuity is the normal form of benefit. And by that we mean that the value of the single life annuity is what determines all the other payment options. So how do they determine the value of your single life annuity? Well, you go to the big book, you find out how long you're going to live, you add up all those monthly payments, and your pension is worth one big pile of money. And they don't care how you slice it. You can take nice even slices for life, or you can choose to leave money for someone else after you've passed away. The only thing they care about is that the value of your choice is equal to or less than that pile of money. And if you're ever curious as to what that number is for you, you can actually look up a valuation of it on the internet. We took a single life annuity paying $1693.88 for a male in Texas age 55. We went to a website, mediatannuities.com, and we said, we've got this annuity that's going to pay us this amount of money each month. How much would it cost to buy something like that? And they said, we will gladly sell you an annuity that will pay you $1693.88 a month if you give us $352,213. And that's a whole hell of a lot of money. And not only is it a big amount of money on your balance sheet, but it was a big amount of money on the airline's balance sheet. And that's why the fight over pensions got so nasty in the bankruptcy. It's why American Airlines fought to terminate the pensions. Ultimately, they ended up being frozen. And it's why US Airways was able to successfully terminate their plans to the PBGC. This was a huge liability for the airlines as they were restructuring. So what about those other options? Well, it's nice to share, and that's a pension for your life and someone else's life as well. And they'll get an annuity for their life after you've passed away. That makes it the survivor annuity. But remember that it's still the same big pile of money, and you're choosing to leave them anywhere from 50 to 100% of what you get. Now, this is not your single life annuity amount, but your share of the joint annuity. But remember, the more you leave them, the less you're going to get. And what happens if they die first? Oh crap, I'm stuck with that lower monthly amount. I could have had a higher amount with a single life annuity. But there is a way to cover that risk, and flight attendants have an option that no other work group has. It's called the pop-up option. And what it means is that by taking a slightly lower amount each month, you cover the risk that the joint annuitant dies first. So if you've chosen the pop-up option and your spouse passes away before you, rather than being stuck with the lower amount, you'll pop back up to the single life annuity amount, which is the greatest form of benefit, and you'll have that for the rest of your life. Now, if you predecease your spouse, then they'll have whatever percentage of the joint and survivor you elected when you commenced your benefit. And most people will take one of these two options, but there is another option out there, and it's called the guaranteed period certain. And that means that the checks are going to come for a minimum of 10, 15, or 20 years if you're Legacy American, or 5, 10, or 15 years if you're Legacy US Airways. And it's important to note that this is a minimum, not a maximum. That always seems to confuse people. It's important to note that there is not one pension option you can choose where the checks will stop before you pass away. But why would somebody choose the guaranteed period certain? Well, probably someone who's sure they're not going to live much longer. And we'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, we counseled a flight attendant who was terminally ill with cancer, and she was a single mom with an 18-year-old daughter. And her single life annuity amount was $2,000. And when she plugged in her daughter's age as the joint annuitant, it knocked her portion down to $800. And then with the 50% election, the daughter was only going to get $400 a month for the rest of her life. And that's okay, but it's not going to be real helpful when you've got things like college and getting started in a career and other things that need to be paid for. So when we looked at the guaranteed period certain, we saw that it bumped the flight attendant's pension from $2,000 down to $1,800. And that's what she elected. But then when she passed away 6 months later, for the remaining 19 and a half years, her daughter will get that $1,800 a month. And at the end of the 20-year period, 20 years since the flight attendant began the pension, the checks will stop. Now, if you elect the guaranteed period option and you pass away outside of your guaranteed period, you will continue to receive checks until you pass away. But because you died outside the period, there will be no beneficiary. But again, people who choose the guaranteed period are usually people who know that they are terminal or don't have a lot of time left, and it's a way to provide higher benefit, but for a fixed amount of time. Legacy American Airlines flight attendants also have a fourth option. It's called the level income option, and that's more money up front and less later on. And you'll see this on your pension estimate. You have two choices, either to age 62 or to your full Social Security retirement age. And if you've already passed one or both, then this level income option will not show up on your pension estimate at all. But if you haven't, you'll see that it pays you a higher annuity amount until you reach the target age, either 62 or your full Social Security age, and then there's a considerable drop for the remaining balance of your life. To be honest, this isn't a very popular option. Most people get very excited about the higher money up front, but the money that they get post Social Security or post age 62 is so much lower that it usually turns people off. But it is an option nonetheless. Now, if you've got a PBGC pension, you'll be communicating with them directly for all matters relating to your pension. They've got an 800 number, they've got a website, and you'll be using them to update your contact info, if you want to request an estimate, if you've been divorced and you need to file a quadro, they'll be able to assist you with that. You can learn more about your different payment options, and when you're ready to begin your pension, you'll give them a call to get all of your paperwork. Now, LUS flight attendants have a Social Security offset provision in their pension plan. And once the flight attendant reaches age 62, or if married, the younger of the flight attendant or the spouse reaches age 62, the pension is reduced or offset by a predetermined formula. And this offset's going to occur whether you begin taking Social Security or not, and it actually has no impact on your Social Security benefit. It's more of an age offset. When you're looking at your estimates, if it shows that you are beginning your pension prior to age 62, you'll see that you have the option of choosing a higher pre-62 amount and then a lower post-62 amount with the offset, or choosing one of the other options. The PBGC calls them levelized options, where the offset is factored in from the beginning of the benefit. However, you'll draw the same amount of money for the rest of your life. Make sure that you check out the Good Slide handout, as we have specific examples and screenshots of what it looks like on a PBGC estimate. A little pension advice for you. Pension kits can be requested from American or from the PBGC no more than 90 days out from retirement. And the first month is always paid retroactively. Usually takes about 6 to 8 weeks following retirement before you're in the system. Usually you'll retire, say, May 1st, and you can expect your first pension to be deposited sometime in the middle of June, but it'll be for May and June combined, and then after that you'll get paid on the 1st of every month. And pensions always start on the 1st of the calendar month, so it's important to make sure that you're done with your last trip before the end of the previous calendar month, not the contractual month, because remember, there's some months where our contractual month does not mirror the calendar month. We always go by the calendar month with pensions. It's also important to mention that if you've got a fly-through trip that cannot be dropped, such as removal for vacation, or if you're on the sick list, that will keep you on payroll and it will delay your pension by a month. So you want to make sure that in that last month of flying, that your last trip gets back, whether you're flying it or not, a couple of days before the end of the month, so that there's no issue with having you retired. Now, if you've been down the aisle a few times, and we're not just talking about the airplane aisle, but if you've been down the aisle with a couple of marriages under your belt, you're going to need to make sure that you have copies of those divorce decrees and quadros when you submit your pension paperwork, or your pension payments will be delayed. If either the airline or the PBGC knows that you've been married, and they will, because you have to fill out a marital declaration page on your pension kit, and you don't have the supporting documentation that shows that your pension is free and clear, they will withhold processing your pension until they have that documentation. If your ex-spouse is entitled to a percentage of your pension as part of your divorce settlement, that quadro will need to be submitted so that the money that's set aside for your spouse can be earmarked and taken out of your pension. If you're widowed, make sure that you include a copy of your spouse's death certificate when submitting your kit. And if you're an LUS flight attendant who's going to start double dipping, just remember that your pension can begin no earlier than the 1st of the month following either your 62nd birthday if you're a shuttle flight attendant, or 65th birthday if you're a non-shuttle flight attendant. Now, we've talked about what happens to your pension once you've started it and you pass away. And it'll be basically whatever option you chose. But what happens if you die before you retire? Well, federal law says that your spouse automatically gets a 50% joint and survivor option, and that's by default. However, in 2001, APFA and the company negotiated what's called the Qualified Pre-Retirement Survivor Annuity. And this is a form that allows you to leave 100% of your pension to your spouse if you were to die before you actually started commencing the pension payments. And the form can be found in JetNet. It's also on the APFA retirement page, and we've got a copy of it in the Good Slide handout. And flight attendants are the only work group that can do this, and the company pays. This was one of the bright spots of our 2001 contract. You'll talk to other work groups and they'll say, no, don't fill that out. It's going to cost you money in retirement. Just smile and nod your head. The truth is it costs them money in retirement, but it doesn't cost you anything because the premiums are paid by the company. The only kicker is that you have to be married at least 1 year, so no deathbed marriages. Now, marriage equality is something kind of new for us. We have a lot of people that can now be married that previously could not. Same-sex marriage is treated as any other marriage for pension purposes, and that includes PBGC pensions. So there's the automatic 50% survivor rights for PBGC pensioners, and for legacy American flight attendants that have been married at least a year, they have the QPSA form on file that we just talked about. You've got the 100% survivor rights. Any questions?